Welcome back, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us again here on Adobe Live on Behance. Thank you to Jesus for that wonderful segment that you just did for the Photoshop Daily Creative Challenge. My name is Voodoo Val, and I'm going to be your host for this new illustration segment. And I am joined by my new friend, Shanee. How are you, Shanee?
Hi guys, I'm so excited to be here. I'm a little nervous, but I'm really excited to be here. I think this is going to be so much fun.
Well, don't worry about being nervous because everyone here is super nice and super excited to just to be able to hang out with you and see what you do and stuff. This is one big family here. For those of you who may be new in the chat, this is going to be an illustration segment, like I said, but we are not the only designers who are going to be on for today. I'm going to pop over here. I'm going to check out the schedule just to show you guys a little bit about what is coming up after us and also what you can expect for tomorrow. So we have the Getting Started with Evan Abrams and After Effects in the mornings. We had Jesus Ramirez with the Photoshop Daily Creative Challenge earlier, just before our segment. Shanee is here with me, as I said, for the illustration segment. And then right after us today, we're going to have Andrew Hockrattle with the Illustrator Daily Creative Challenge. Rachel Smith will be on after that with the UI UX Design System segment, followed by Andrea, who will be here for the Adobe XD Daily Creative Challenge. And then we're going to round out the day with the Sketch Party with Kathleen Martin. So it's going to be super awesome. I can't wait to dive into all of that today. But for now, I'd love to kind of go into a little bit about what you have planned for us today, Shanee, and what you're going to be working on, and all that good stuff. So why don't we jump into it?
Definitely, definitely. So today I'm not only doing illustration, but I'm also doing design as well. What my idea wanted to do is kind of create a branding approach of illustration and design and combine them together instead of only relying on photography.
Okay.
So for day one, I'm going to be focusing on the branding, and then on day two, I'm going to be focusing on the brand illustration that ties everything together. Right now, I have my mood board and stuff, but that's what I'm just working on today.
Awesome, awesome. I'm excited. So this image that you have up with the two lovely ladies, is that the mood board? Or is that the template you're going to be working
No, that's
on?
a mood board. So I built a mood board today. I just kind of prepared myself with a couple of textures and colors and typefaces and just kind of giving the theme of the brand. It's just called Sunnies for sunglasses, So kind of having like a really cool, fun vibe. Sort of Gen Z millennial, super approachable, super fun. I just kind of want to play around and see what we create.
I have to say I love this mood board because typically, like, when I create a mood board or when I see other designers create mood boards, it's usually just like a grid of like different images, but I feel like you almost created like a branding piece in and of itself. Like, I could see this already being used for the branding, so this is really, really cool. Do you do this every time? Like, do your mood boards usually look like this?
My mood boards do look like this. It depends on the client. Some clients, they prefer the actual grid squares because it's easier for them to take in the information. And some
Mm.
clients love this sort of layered collage style because they really get to feel like dive into the brand and like really feel it.
Nice, nice. Yeah, this is just very unique. So yeah, I'm excited to see your process. Let's jump into it.
Awesome, awesome. So getting started, I kind of have this mood board. Just going to talk about my process. I really, really was inspired by the holographic colors and sort of like those sunglasses that have the really cool colorized lens.
Yeah.
And so I want to like to pull that and kind of create a color palette out of that, create a really cool logo and a graphic package around that. So I'm trying to get as much as we possibly can done in the time allotted.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to first start off with my color palette. And usually what I do is I just pop up a couple of squares just so I can just start putting colors everywhere, and then I'll start color dropping
Gotcha,
from the
gotcha.
that I have. So for this, I'm looking for something maybe between 5 or 6 colors, 3, 4, 5, because I definitely want to utilize gradient meshes, which I absolutely love in Illustrator.
Amazing. Okay. So you're just making like shapes and stuff right now that you can drop the colors into, and then what shortcut are you using just to duplicate those across your artboard there?
For sure. So what I'm doing is when I grab it, I select the shape and I'm holding the Option key. And when you see these two little double arrows come,
Mm-hmm.
pop it down, hold Shift, and let it go.
Nice, nice.
Yep.
Kathleen is saying, love that even mood boards get design attention. Yes, I agree. Cody also is saying that mood board is beautiful. I definitely agree.
Thank you so much.
And it's kind of cool, so for your mood board, do your mood boards typically go along with like the design style that you're also going for the project, or is this just how you're doing this one in particular?
Well, so usually what I find myself inspired by is when I see like a really cool image or a texture or even like a typeface that I really, really love, I just kind of pull from that and then I just kind of layer it on top. And then that's kind of the direction that I see the brand going in. Of course, with this, like if I find something super specific that I'm really, really passionate about, I'll definitely like do an in-depth mood board. But I'll do like three of these for three different brand directions.
Oh, I like that. I like that. I think maybe I will try and do that myself too, because like I said, I think it's pretty common to kind of make a grid, and like you said, it's kind of like a I guess like the usually like understood format for a mood board, especially when you're presenting to clients. But I think it would be interesting to do some experiments, and maybe people in chat would like to try it too. Just kind of making your mood board be almost like reminiscent of the design you're working at, and kind of just from the get go, almost like you're already putting time and effort into creating the design,
Mhm.
like you're already like boom into it, instead of making the mood board and then trying to compile them together in the style you're looking for. I think that's just so cool.
Really awesome. I think it's really helpful too because the client really gets a sense of it and they really can see the other textural elements and how they all work together. For example, when you do a lot of social media posts or if you have
Mm-hmm.
any other like sponsored ads and stuff, it just really gives them a piece to see it. So right now with the colors that I'm working on, I'm trying to come up with a color palette based off of the images, the colors in here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm debating on whether I want to go super saturated or a little bit toned down.
Mm-hmm.
I'm loving the saturation of the blue, but then I feel like when they're all super saturated, it might be a little bit too bright. But then
Mm-hmm.
I'm feeling like this might be a bit too muted. So I'm just right now my process is just really just pull, drop, and honestly see what fits.
And I have done a project in the past too where I did take a little bit of inspiration similar to this with like using like the holographic kind of textures, and I think you don't really realize until you try to like make a color palette based on holographic stuff actually how like in depth those gradients are. It's totally different than what I expected, because I was like, oh yeah, if I'm using like, because I think I was doing something similar to the color scheme in between the two ladies there, where it's
Mhm.
like bubblegum colors,
Yep.
but it's not like the actual color palette is not only like a soft blue and a soft pink. It's like so many things in between, and there are some oddly saturated bits and then some desaturated parts, and it's like, how do I make a color palette that works? And it
Exactly.
ended up being a little more complicated than I first initially thought.
No, I'm actually I'm interested. I'm into this color palette that I have right here.
Yeah, I like that.
Definitely going to continue playing with that. I'm fine with this. Okay, cool. So now the color palette, my next step that I'm going to do is I'm going to start looking at the logo.
Hmm.
So I'm just going to start playing around with a couple of typefaces. So I'm going to switch into Adobe Typekit.
Yay! I love
Yes.
this so much. This is like my new favorite place to be on the
Mine
internet. Just like I sometimes I actually like just scroll through and change up all of the filters and just see if I can find like new interesting fonts. I love it so
too.
much.
And I love the actual like the diversity that's offered specifically, within the typefaces.
Totally.
And I
Looks
love
like
how they added
we have somebody in chat named Kimberly saying, "Hi everyone, this is the first live that I've been able to catch. That's awesome. Welcome in, Kimberly." And
and
then Minimal Design Studio says, "I was inspired by an image of a very beautiful woman of color, and someone suggested to me that I so minimal design is kind of bringing up like illustrating." And doing projects based on men and women of color, and if that's something that he should focus on, or if some people may find it offensive. Personally, I love to see more art based on people of color. in my opinion. Yeah, I love to see more. And I, as somebody who's like a fan, and I kind of said this last week, I'm a fan of like Dungeons and Dragons and like fantasy and everything. And in my particular area of like art study and art, just like the things I like, I feel like there's an underabundance of art based around people of color. And like I said, we could always do with more. So I say, as long as your artwork is respectful, and it's coming from a place of love, like it's something you're passionate about, I don't see anything wrong with that.
I don't see anything wrong with it either as well. And quite frankly, we need the representation,
Mm-hmm.
honestly. Even like sometimes when I go through stock photos and stuff, it's like it's lots beautiful. And one thing I actually loved about the Adobe Premium is
Mm-hmm.
that you have such a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful view and like a range of women of color specifically in your
Mm-hmm.
stuff. And that's where I got the main inspiration image that I'm going for that I love. So I was super excited to look through that and realize that I didn't have not just one option, but multiple options.
Yep, I agree. And I've found just a lot, because it's, for me, being like a mixed woman, there's always like either or for me, and like to get on and find that there's such a broad range of images of people from like all different ends of the spectrum. I was like, yay, we're all here. This is awesome. So it was cool. It was cool. Vincent says, preach.
Great, love it. So I'm just gonna give you a little bit of background for my choices for the logo. I don't want to do anything too intricate. I know obviously it can be something with sunglasses, double O's, whatever and stuff. But
Hmm.
I kind of want to stay away from that, and I really want the branding to and like all the elements to speak for itself and not really focus on the logo.
Hmm.
One thing I've noticed whenever I do my design research, and I notice some of the biggest brands and the most iconic, like recognized brands, their logos are really really simple,
Hmm.
and it doesn't have to be super intricate, to really display the message. So that's
Yeah.
kind of where I'm going with. So I think I have a couple of typefaces that I think that I'm gonna play with, and I'm gonna type them out here. So what I usually do when I do logos is I just type the word that's the logo over and over and over again,
Hmm.
and then in the different typefaces, I'll make it super super large. All right, cool.
Stacy is here in chat, and it's also her first time in the chat. Welcome in, Stacy Francis.
Hi, Stacy.
And then you just kind of change it through to all of yours so you have it nice. Kind of
I
keep
do that,
everything.
and then I'll duplicate this section and I'll create it to outlines. And then I'll keep this one as live
Oh.
type in case I have to do any kerning or tracking or anything. And then I'll just copy and paste. It's like a lot of copy and pasting just to make sure that I don't miss anything or I don't like mess up any calculations that I've done before.
Yeah, and that's the best way to go too, because I've done projects where, like, in the beginning of my career, where I just like thought, well, I've got to do everything from scratch. I've got to do like all these little, and then after a while, it's just like, you know what? I'm going to duplicate because it saves time. It keeps everything
But
specific and like in line with everything else, and I don't have to worry about anything.
it does, and I love it. Ooh, I'm actually really liking this template gothic. I don't know why, but it reminds me of a stamp, which I appreciate. And I think that's kind of fun for me. So these are kind of the typefaces that I'm going for, just something kind of funky, interesting, and new.
Nice.
All right, cool. So this is my process. I love to like dig deep, deep, deep in here. And I actually never work on the white space of the artboard. For me, it's a little distracting.
Oh
I
yeah.
prefer to utilize the gray space around just because I can move everything. I know that's just a personal preference.
Yeah, as an illustrator too, I actually usually when I'm on stream, I actually start with like a white background when I'm painting or drawing, but a lot of times if I'm just like using Fresco on my iPad or something and I'm like by myself drawing, I usually change the background to a gray color like this.
Yes,
Because it feels like it's not so hard to approach like a stark white canvas that's
it
empty.
is. It does. All right, so for this, again, all I'm gonna do is just kind of like just play around with the kerning and tracking for it. I may do a couple of things for it, but I don't want to really, really, really mess with it, honestly speaking.
Hmm.
I want to go a little bit tighter.
And do you ever heavily change fonts that you use, or is this a typical thing that you usually like to stick to, of like not transforming them so completely? Because I found the more I transform a font that I'm using, the harder it is to try to use the font in the design later, because then it's so vastly different from the logo I make.
Number one, yeah, so that is one of the biggest points that I agree with 100%. But when I first started designing about 6 years ago, I was that designer that really, like, I would go in and like cut letters in half and add things to it, and
Mm-hmm.
intrude. And as I grew, as I started to grow as a designer and a creative, I just learned that sometimes all that extra embellishment is just not needed.
Yeah.
And it really is just not needed, and it really kind of detracts from what the goal is. And so for me, like, again, like I said, some of the most iconic brands are a literal type out, and their logo has been maybe been updated maybe once every 20 years, and their
Mm-hmm.
customer base is still the same. So I think it's more about the trust rather than the actual, oh, she made a super specified you with things popping out of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely.
I also find that like if I really do need to take a font and make it fancy to do something like that, like maybe that's what the client wants. I typically do better if I find a font that has interesting glyphs,
Yeah.
um, because then the fancy versions, like the glyphs for that font, typically they're fancier and they have more flourishes, but it doesn't really subtract from the original details of the font because they're made specifically for it. So it's not me embellishing and adding a bunch of extra stuff. It's, using the glyphs and then um, like doing regular copy with that font next to it. It actually still looks pretty cohesive, when I use those. And I do try to stay away from like inventing my own strange shapes to go with a font as often as I can.
Definitely. No, I definitely agree with everything that you're saying. Like, as you know, when you're a younger, like, more experienced designer, you just kind of focus more on the actual elements that build it itself rather than all the individual details and nuances. And of course, those are extremely important. I'm not saying that at all, but
Mm-hmm.
sometimes kind of focus on those super detailed things, you're missing the whole point of the design.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so I love adding a couple of things in there, but I'm not going to go so crazy with the logo. And one of the things I love about Illustrator is these sort of warp effects. So I just kind of like to play around with them and see what kind of comes up. There's so many fun things that happen.
It's actually a favorite thing of mine that I never used to really get into. I think that there's a lot of things in like Illustrator and Photoshop that can it they the individual effects that you can apply by themselves don't always look super professional, right? Like, and you always usually have to like try some experiments and like add a little bit of extra oomph onto the top of things. And because I was so unfamiliar and because I didn't really know what to go with them, like if I was just going to apply um, a bulge and leave it as is, I got like a little discouraged because it didn't look like some of the really cool bulge effects that I'd seen in more prominent logos.
Mm-hmm.
But it was something I definitely had to jump into and do what you're doing, kind of is like um, apply that flag, and move everything around and really situate stuff to meet my needs rather than hit that effect, leave it as is, and then that's like the only thing I do to it, like that getting in there and doing some experimentation really makes all the difference. So if anyone in chat I think is like less experienced with kind of messing with these sort of effects, I say get in there, even just type out your name, you know and play with some of those effects and warp things around and get comfortable with it, because I think that you'll be about as surprised as I was when I got in there and just tried to become familiar with it, just how much of a difference noodling with those effects after you apply them can make rather than just applying them once.
For sure. And then also one thing I've noticed is that the way design is also changing. A lot of the super super done up look. People like that sort of hand drawn quality. So things are sort of like imperfect, sort of a fit, and I appreciate that as well in a way. Of course, you have your polish to it, but I do appreciate the work that doesn't look super like clean, perfect all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So this is just my personal, my personal preferences.
Yeah, and that's kind of what this is all about, is just being able to really watch you work and see how you do things. Because we've got a lot of designers that come on that have totally different ways of approaching design and say, like, this is the bread and butter. This is what I do. This is what, I encourage other people to try. But the beauty is that we get to see so many people do different things, and there may very well be some folks in chat who have tried other methods and it's not working, and then watching you work today, they'll be like, oh my gosh, that just clicks for me. And maybe this ends up being their go-to from now on.
Yeah, it could happen.
Mm-hmm.
It could happen. I'm liking just looking at this. I actually really like this because it reminds me of the inside of a sunglasses shade. And
Yeah.
so I'm kind of drawn to that in a way. Um,
I actually do think it's my favorite thus far because it just seems like it's such a dramatic effect, but I can read it really well still. Which can sometimes isn't the case, when you apply an effect and you make
mhm.
something that looks neat, but at first glance you don't know what it says. It's like it's like boom, it's bold and it's there, but it also, like you said, it's got that shape like what you're branding for, and I can read it. So, and Stacy says she likes it too. So,
I like it. Let's go with that one then. I love a decision. So we're gonna do that. So first thing that I do also, just to make sure that I also like it, is to just pop this a little bit smaller. I'm gonna duplicate multiples of this, and what I'm gonna do with this is just pop it onto the color and see how I like it on the color, and I'm gonna create some color combos.
ooh,
Color combos are my absolute favorite. It's like my bread and butter. So I think it's extremely important to kind of, when you have like a color palette that has multiple colors, like 5, 6, or 7, I think it's super helpful to come up with like at least 2 or 3 combos of colors that look really good. And then
yes,
apply, your type, your background, and all your visual elements around it.
absolutely. Also, Cody Bear is posted uh, a wonderful reminder. Thank you so much, Cody. Later in the stream, we will be doing portfolio reviews. So, if anyone in chat would like a chance to be chosen for a review during the last 30 minutes of the stream, Shanee and I will actually be pulling up a couple of portfolios. We only have time for two. We'll be pulling up a couple of them and going over and kind of giving you folks some feedback, general feedback on your work and presentation of your portfolio. So please join the Discord that Cody has posted a link to, and post your portfolios, your Behance portfolios, or Adobe portfolios into the portfolio review channel, and that is where you'll need to make sure if you post on any other channel they won't be seen. So definitely make sure you post it on the proper channel, and we will select 2 of those and go over them towards the end of stream. Carol also says, I saw the sunglass shape too. And yeah, I'm really loving it. I don't so when you did that at first, was that intentional, or was that kind of a happy accident, do you think?
That was actually a happy accident, honestly speaking, because this particular filter, I usually stay away from it, but for
Mm-hmm.
some reason I was like, let me try this.
We're
And
gonna
it was
see how this goes.
very
Nice. I find that happens a lot in my work. And I think what it can be chalked up to is kind of like what you said. I never usually do this, but I decided to, just to test it out. If you can get comfortable with your work and really just try and um, get out of your comfort zone a little bit and do a little bit of experimentation, set aside some time for that in your projects. Sometimes you really do run across things and you're like, wow, not only does this work for this project, but this might be something that I do again in the future. You have no idea, you know? So definitely experiment when you're working, folks. And I also think, I don't know how you feel, Shanee, but the more I learn to experiment, the more confident I become in my work.
Oh,
Because,
definitely.
yeah, because when you experiment and something goes wrong and you're like, I don't really like this, it doesn't feel like the end of the world if you've made something that doesn't look good, you know? And then you become more confident kind of seeing, I don't want to say failures, but seeing concepts um that aren't right for your project, and not feeling like you failed when you see those concepts not like kind of fall flat. So it kind of helps you develop a bit of confidence as well, I think.
I 100% agree with that. And one thing I just did is added a sort of a cream color. And
Mm.
that definitely helps. When it comes to basis of colors, even though I didn't even do it for my own this way, but I love to always have like a super, super light color and a super, super dark color to replace your white and black. Some
Mm-hmm.
get plain up white or black. So this cream would act as the white, and I potentially might make this a little bit darker or add an extra darker color to
Mm-hmm.
add a black. But I kind of like this dark blue as the dark color
Yeah,
itself. I think
I
it adds.
really think it works well with the cream and the reddish color as well, you know.
Definitely agree. And how do you I love to get feedback personally from everyone. So how's everyone feeling about the saturation? Because I'm a little iffy on it.
To be honest, I really like, it's got this feel, this vibe that's like very warm.
Mhm.
And like it's like you know, sunglasses and things, but I feel like it works because especially that like orange that you just dropped in there, that looks so cool. I love it. I mean, I may be biased because I'm literally wearing a collared shirt that's like that color right now because I love it. But I think that it makes it seem like bright and happy. But the more subdued color, instead of it being like boom in your face bright colors, makes it to me seem really classy and mature, if that makes
Well,
sense, you know? Like I'm cool and I'm hip and I've got like these really trendy awesome glasses on, but like I also have the potential to be very professional if I need to. That's kind of
very
how it feels to me. Tara says it's a vibe.
it's a vibe. I love to hear that. Awesome. So next we're gonna so right now we have the color palettes that I love. Logo done, loving it. So I was actually really inspired by these sort of sun shapes, and so I'm gonna kind of create my own sun shape right now.
Ooh.
I'm not going to do something super. One thing I love is again I love hand drawn vector elements. So I'm going to create my own. I'm going to do this circle, but everything else I'm going to kind of draw around it. So when I draw, I like to utilize the pencil tool, and then I go over all my curves with the smooth tool.
Oh, okay. And are you using a stylus right now, or are you using
I
your?
I
Okay,
am
perfect.
using my Wacom tablet.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I love about the Wacom tablet and the pencil tool is if you double tap it, you can go into the pencil tool options, and you can also set the fidelity for the smoothness of your lines. And I usually have it in the middle to kind of add some sort of texture, but for today, I think I'm going to pop it up a little bit higher just to keep the lines a little bit more smooth.
Nice, nice. And then when you work, do you always use like a stylus for all of the steps of your work, or do you kind of use a mix between like the Wacom tablet and like a mouse, for instance?
I don't really even use a mouse, honestly speaking. I use my finger.
Mm. On the trackpad thing,
Yeah,
on the oh.
kind of like helps. So I'm just gonna do this, and then I'm just going to option it around. I literally forgot how to duplicate object. It's been a while since I've done this, so I apologize, but I've literally forgotten how to duplicate
Oh
things. What
no, that's totally fine. I find that whenever I'm because Photoshop is my bread and butter,
Mine too.
and I oh man, sometimes I will do a project for somebody because someone will see something in my portfolio and be like, hey, you did this, can you do something like this for me? And I'll be like, oh yeah, and I've done it before. So then I jump in there and I'm like, wait, where is that? What, because there's so much happening.
So much,
So that's just the struggle of life, man. That's just
like
how it
it happened,
goes.
and I'm actually okay with it. I mean, there were some vectors that I saw. I'll actually show you from Adobe. Where if the vectors will show up. That's not the vector. That's not.
Ooh.
Let's look at some sun vectors and
Yeah, let's I love going on the hunt for like a new image. It's always great.
that's the one. So I was loving this.
Ooh,
Loving
yeah.
the pieces. And I like this sort of half sun sort of feel too.
Oh
Even this.
yeah.
Yeah, I love the little textures and individual pieces for it.
Mhm. And there's something to be said, I mean, like since we've been kind of talking about shapes that look like sunglasses and stuff, like the sun could also be
Yeah.
an interesting double for lenses, and then the depending on how you stylize the rays around it, they could look like eyelashes, which is kind of an interesting
Ah,
concept.
you just inspired my next idea. Thank you.
Yeah,
I love
teamwork.
that. I love that. Literally love that. Because as soon as you said that and I looked to the side on this, I'm like, that actually could kind of pass for that too. So,
Yay, collaboration.
and let's play with this on this side. Again, I really, really enjoy playing with things on the gray. It just helps me out.
Same, same. Also, there was somebody in chat. I'm gonna scroll up here just to make sure that I get the name. Um, but we have some self-taught artists in the chat, and they wonder if we have any tips for them. And then we have also some people in here like Erica who are beginners in Adobe Illustrator, just kind of looking for tips about like Illustrator, and then self teaching. I'm a self taught artist, and to be honest, like using resources like Adobe Live and just getting on YouTube is a really great way to learn. I would say the road to self teaching is not all fun and games, just because you get to decide what you learn, when you learn it, and how you're going to go about it doesn't mean that it's going to be just like super easy. You do have to stay very disciplined, I would say, and keep your eye on the ball, so to speak. But I think that more and more these days, there are a lot of really fabulous resources for people who decide to go that route. What do you think? What is your background, Shanee, as far as our education? Are you self taught, or did you go to school for design?
I went to school actually for theater and then I took a couple of design classes and I switched to design, but
Oh
I did
wow.
it was an interesting college experience, but my college did not have a graphic design program. So
mm.
I was only taught desktop publishing, which was just InDesign. And this is InDesign CS3 back then.
Oh
So it
man,
was way back when I was in college and I
back
was
in the
like,
day.
way back in the day. And so with that, I kind of just kind of had to. I was not taught Illustrator. I was learned Illustrator by myself.
Mm-hmm.
Back then, I just did a lot of Google tutorials and Illustrator tutorials. That's pretty much what I did. I just went online and I just Googled and I found stuff. I played around with things and I had no idea what I was doing, but I'm like, oh, this is cool. Let's
Mm-hmm.
move on with it. Tips for self-taught artists, honestly speaking, there's so much material online. I say literally do a project every single day.
Yeah.
That's what to me. I did a project every day, even if I didn't like the project. I just created something every single day with new tools that I
Mm-hmm.
never used, just so I can get myself comfortable. And then first I started with Photoshop, and then I went in to illustrate even more into Illustrator, and so I appreciated that, and that really gave me a leg up.
Yeah, it's funny you say. I kind of found myself in the same boat as you, where I went to a community college briefly, um, and art school was never really an option for me, and my school did not offer a program for the kind of art that I wanted to do. And so I was actually going to school for forensic anthropology. I wanted to be like the girl on that show Bones. I wanted to like go and like investigate and stuff like that, but I realized like I kind of just like really wanted to draw. And they didn't offer anything like that, so I kind of just drew while I was finishing out my semester, and then the next semester I didn't go back. I was just like, I found this wonderful thing called YouTube tutorials, and I love them, and I think I'm gonna stick with this. And then I just kind of like switched over to that, and my parents were like, you've got like 2 or 3 years to try and make this work, and if it doesn't work, you got to go back to school. And I was like, that's fair. And so I just went and found the Adobe Creative Cloud YouTube, and found other designers online. That's another great resource. I think that you would be surprised just how many designers will actually get back to you if you ask them questions about art. Some of them don't. And I've run into my fair share of people who either don't get back to you when you ask them art questions because they're busy, or they're just not comfortable answering questions on the fly. But a lot of people, if you are very kind and polite and approach people for advice on not only how to do the work that you're interested in doing, but also asking questions about business and maybe what their experience has been, and if they have any advice to offer somebody who, basically what I used to ask people is, what would you say to yourself when you started down this career path at the beginning of the journey? And a lot of people will get back to you and give you some brief advice. And it's really, really cool to be able to talk with folks. So reach out, um, and I would also say I spent a lot of time waiting for that moment where I would suddenly be professional, because that's what, when we're freelancing, that's kind of what we're all like waiting for, right? Is like that moment in our career where it's like, I have made it. I promise you, like, an owl does not deliver a message from Hogwarts to let you know you're a wizard when you're a freelance artist. It doesn't happen. A lot of that confidence and a lot of that realization and understanding comes from within, I think. And sometimes it does not at all. Sometimes you get that validation from other people. But I would say, if I could offer anyone at the beginning of their journey some advice that I needed when I first began, is don't stress about it. Just do what you love. Make sure you stay disciplined in whatever regimen you decide to go with for your practice, and continue to do what you're passionate about. Because I worried way too often, for way too long, about whether I had made it or not. And like I said, the owl doesn't show up on your doorstep with a letter to let you know. It happens gradually and sometimes without your notice. So
Definitely agree with that. Definitely agree. So what I'm doing right now is I'm making a couple of gradients based off of the color palette that we chose and based off of the mood board. So these right here have about 4 colors, and then I'm going to do another one that's more in the same color tone.
I'm in love with those, by the way.
Thank you. And all of them together, I think it makes the saturation of the colors by themselves look a little bit better too, which I'm excited about.
So are you going to put the logo over these two to test, or are these going to just be like, ooh, I'm so excited.
Yeah.
It's going to look so good. I love the Hogwarts owl analogy. So true. Thank you, Stacy. Been doing this for 10 years and only just starting to feel pro. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Stacy. Welcome into Adobe Live.
There we go. So we're gonna pop this here.
Nakia Spurlock is saying, how did you find your style in design? How long did it take to come up with it? I've got an answer for this, but I want to know what you think, because we kind of do different kinds of work. So,
for sure, for me, my style kind of came about because I freelance in like so many different, sectors between the music industry, fashion industry, the fitness industry, the lifestyle industry. I just kind of had just dabbled my own in there. And so from that, I kind of just took like elements from each industry that I really like, that really resonated with me and that I also saw myself being a consumer of.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just kind of like adapted them to my own personal style. I mean, I would say my style is more of just like the female empowerment, like branding space.
Mm-hmm.
And that I just love to research and see what millennial Gen Z females like myself love. And so that's mostly how it also comes through, and also seeing from my experience what has the best traction.
Gotcha, gotcha. Um, for me personally, with regards to finding style, it's another one of those things. I think like you do come about over time. There's no Hogwarts owl for that either.
Mm-hmm.
But just like ta-da, here's your style. This is what you'll be doing from now on. And for me, I think style is a collection of a few different elements of your practice and your journey. One of those is basic fundamentals because depending on rather and this is from the point of view of like because I predominantly I am a painter. I paint like I would say 80%, sometimes more often, each year. About 80% or more of my work that I do generally is painting. Painting portraits, designing characters, designing creatures, things like that. And my a portion of my style hinges on my interpretation of the basic fundamentals of art. And I still have some practice to go. I still have some growing to do. But my understanding of anatomy, my understanding of color and light, my understanding of design, and how I interpret those concepts come through in how I create art. And it's also so basic fundamentals. It's also my own personal passions and desires. So I'm going to gravitate towards certain things. Like maybe my favorite thing to paint in a portrait is um, eyes. Maybe a person's favorite thing to do in design is creating unique gradients and using images or whatever your passion is. Those things are going to be more prominent in your work and your style as well, because that's what you focus on when you're creating. um, and then just like the overall subject matter of your work. And I think that these things are different for each individual person. And so once you get comfortable with those concepts, your style starts to emerge. But you are not, I think maybe unless you're doing something really, really dramatic, um, you're not really going to know when that style hits you. To be perfectly frank and honest, when I look at my own portfolio, I feel like I'm looking at a collection of art done by tons of different kinds of people. Like,
Mm-hmm.
like a bunch of different people contributed to a collection of art. And yet other people tell me, no, I could pick your art out of a collection of artwork. I would know your work everywhere. And I'm like, that's really, really cool, but I don't see it. It's not an easy thing to see on your own. um for branding, is it good to have style? What do you think about that, Shanae? This is from Paul Alvarez the third.
From branding, is it good to have style? I think it is good to have a style for branding. However, I do think it's good to also be adaptable.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, like if you're like a letterer and you're known for being for your hand drawn typography, and that's totally cool. But like if I've noticed, like if you're a branding person who relies only on gradients or only on sans serif typefaces or only a certain type of photography, then I feel like the work can kind of look a bit repetitive.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something personally that I try to avoid. So that's just, something for me that I look at when I look at my styles. I also try to see what's new, what's fresh, what's something that no one else has done in this industry, what's a similar industry that someone else has done, and how can we do that?
Gotcha. um and yeah, I think I've met, or not met, but I've seen some designers that they kind of find like a niche like style that they're passionate about, they eventually get hired for a lot.
Hmm.
uh, but you're right, you know, like favoring certain elements and stuff can sometimes make work very repetitive. And so um, I would say, yeah, like I think it's great to have a style in design. I think it's what sets you apart from the rest of people who are kind of doing their own thing. But also with any kind of, you know, creative field, with any kind of design or painting or creation, I would say always try to grow, always try to test something out. That comes back to like the whole experimentation thing. Like try to experiment with new stuff every once in a while, because you might be surprised and you might start going in a new direction after a while and return to old concepts whenever. But it kind of keeps things fresh.
I definitely.
um, and then we also have another question from Nancy Hernandez. She asks, "Can you ladies share some tips on finding clients?" That's a good question. What do you do when it comes to hunting for clients, Shanae?
Personally, I take advantage of all of these groups that they have on like Slack and on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
There's a bunch of groups for, you know, like being a freelancer, for me living in New York City, for me being a woman of color, for me being a gay woman of color. You
Mm-hmm.
know, there's so many different groups where you can like join in there in for that, and they have so many job opportunities for people who want to, you know, be inclusive with hiring.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I personally found my most success. There's a group called Freelancing Females on Slack, and when I first started freelancing in 2019 full time, the first 6 months of my jobs came from referrals from there.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Honestly. And so, and I love it because it's such a really great community of just like really super smart, super passionate women
Mm-hmm.
who just, you know, who are just so interested in helping folks with their businesses. And then also, I love LinkedIn. LinkedIn is super helpful when it comes to looking for projects, in my opinion. LinkedIn has like a lot of resources, and of course, sometimes it can be a little bit. I know sometimes it can be a little bit daunting when
Mm-hmm.
somebody reaches out to you, or if you reach out to somebody else. But I found success with reaching out to people on LinkedIn and offering my services, and it's also about your approach.
So when it comes to, like you said, your approach, like approaching somebody, um, for
To get to
for
know them.
work, yeah. So
Like
what does that mean to you?
for me, that means I'm not going to just, you know, go into your inbox and say, "Hi, my name is Shanee Benjamin. I love your work. Here's my portfolio. I would
Mm-hmm.
love to." You know, I try to create a relationship. You know, I may comment on your article at first. I may send a line or something, kind of build a connection or relationship first so nobody feels like they're just being used for the knowledge that they have.
Mm-hmm.
And so with that, you get to build a rapport with that person, and then, you know, they think of you when they have projects.
Gotcha, gotcha. So I guess, you know, a lot of just kind of putting yourself out there and
Yes, a lot of
making
network.
friends and things like that, which in itself is pretty rewarding, right?
It is. Since I've been doing this, my creative community is just so vast, and I just really love that. Like, in my head right now, I can name like 10 designers whose work is just so beautiful, and they're really good people to work with. And I just love that I met them on LinkedIn, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
I would have never met them if I didn't reach out, and I appreciate that.
Awesome, awesome. So Malice is saying network. My in my experience, I've because my freelance career has been like really interesting, because sometimes I take commissions, sometimes I don't take commissions, sometimes
Mhm.
I'm working on um, personal work and it generates enough revenue for me to live comfortably. I spent a lot of time like streaming on Twitch, which I think Twitch streaming on Twitch is not for everyone, but for a time for me it was great because you know, people were paying the subscription for me to work on whatever I wanted to work on. So I got to do like for a lot of years just kind of work on my own personal projects. There's a lot of people that have found some great success in employing the use of like newsletters and people who find a lot of work by word of mouth. A lot of my work came from by way of word of mouth, just making friends, like you said, establishing a serious connection with people. Like, I find it comes more naturally because, of course, like you know of people that you really admire and you want to be their friends, and so you message them with the intention of like trying to talk with them. But if it's not genuine, people typically know. So when I reach out to people to
Yeah.
network and to possibly work with them in the future, I message people that I think I could really resonate with, people that I genuinely want to be friends with. And so doing work with those people who have eventually become my friends, and then having them tell their friends about the work that we did together, has led into a lot of work as well. And so it kind of just, I think it also depends on the kind of work that you do. I would say, whatever your creative discipline is, whatever medium you're working in, I would say, what do people do and what is expected in that particular field, and do some research there and then choose what comes naturally to you, as well.
I 100% agree with that. That's very good advice. So right
Frederick
now,
says be personable. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
what I'm doing right now. So what I do is really helpful is I make a grid
Hmm.
of like kind of all of the things that I kind of came up with. And so I'm just like kind of popping in, typography, just colors and sort of the elements so I can kind of see it all together as a grid. And then tomorrow when we come back, I'm doing the illustration part and then we're gonna all bring this together.
Yay! I love this grid, by the way. I love how everything, like, kind of flows really nicely, too. Because in how you have, like, the solids and also the gradients. I'm just digging them so much.
Thank you so much. One thing I think that'll be easy for me is if I start adding this into like a library or if I just pop this here. Let's see, Command B. How much time do we have?
We have we have another 30 minutes before we do portfolio reviews.
Perfect.
Um, So I would say you definitely have 30 minutes, to work. And then portfolio reviews, like I said, folks, they're going to be taking place in 30 minutes. So if you haven't got your portfolio, into the Discord yet, please do so because, we're going to choose a couple of them to go over. That will probably take us like 15 minutes to go through, a couple of those. And then we will return and do a quick recap, of the work we worked on today before we say goodbye. So definitely a minimum of, 30 minutes, which, I
Yep.
think is pretty good time, to be honest. I was actually surprised at how much time we have left. Streaming is always really weird in that sometimes I look down and I'm like, oh my gosh, wow, I have 45 minutes left. This is awesome. And then sometimes I look down and I'm like, there's no way I've got 5 minutes left. I cannot
Yep,
believe that went by so fast.
it happens like that. One thing I've noticed for design trends is that typography, the spacing is starting to get a little bit tighter
Mm,
when it comes to, trends going forward. And I think it's
yeah.
really important to always like pay attention to trends, not follow every trend, but definitely pay attention to things because you can tell the difference between a trend that is going to stick and last versus a trend that's only here for, a year, 3 years maybe.
Yeah, yeah. I agree. Um, let's see. Vasuda says getting clients is really difficult as a freelancer. I do try all sorts of things. Yeah, and it can be stressful. But I also would say, since we're also on the topic a little bit about like portfolios and stuff, is, when you're all making your portfolio, when you are branching out and you're finally kind of taking that plunge to see what kind of work you can get in the freelance world, I would say make sure you put together a portfolio of things that you love, not just things you've done that look good. Um,
Yes.
Sometimes that means spending some time on a few personal projects that represent the kind of work you want to be hired for, because whatever people see in your portfolio, that's what they're going to ask you for. And I've told this story many times about me. Like, I like to design characters and creatures, but I had robots in my portfolio for a long time simply because they looked good and they were a good example of my finished work. But I hate designing robots. I hate it. I've never enjoyed it. I just happened to have one that I needed to do for a job, and everybody kept asking me if they could commission robots from me, and it was miserable. So I was doing all these jobs that I just didn't want to do. So make sure that you're hunting for freelance work properly. Make sure that your portfolio shows what you are looking to do, what you want to create. And also the creation of personal projects that you're really passionate about also helps generate a bit of a following online for it if you're kind of documenting the steps in the process for what you're doing. So you're having fun on a good project, you're filling your social media with process, you're opening a dialogue with people who are potentially following your creation of these projects, and then when you're done you have a wonderful presentation to show off. And I would say make sure you also do case studies, because people who are going to hire you for a project, they don't always just want to see the end project. They want to see what it took for you to do it. They want to see the process. They want to understand from your point of view why you were doing something, and that can really help as well finding work.
I definitely agree with everything that you just said right there.
What are, speaking of personal projects, what are the things that you typically gravitate towards, Shanee, and what is like the kind of work that you love to create the most?
I really genuinely love working with I really love working in the millennial space, like in the female empowerment space. Like I that's just really passionate about that,
Mm-hmm.
especially projects that are about diversity and inclusion.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really passionate about that. And any project that's really about uplifting, women of color,
Mm-hmm.
I gravitate towards that. And it doesn't have to be, just lifestyle. It could be a product, it could be, a lifestyle brand, it could be anything.
Mm-hmm.
I really, really enjoy using my services to help women of color or just women in general just amplify their brand.
Awesome. And then with regards to like approaching projects like that, do you find that you like, because like for today, you've used a lot of really interesting gradients, and we've gotten really crazy with like the type and stuff. Are those like specific elements that you're really drawn to that you like to do often, or are there any other like kind of tools that you find within the programs that you enjoy using the most? For me, obviously, I love to paint. I love like finally getting into like the painting stage of my project, but I wonder what's the most enjoyable portion of like the technical side of a project for you, like where you start to have the most fun.
For me, it would be this part actually.
Yeah.
It's actually this part. It's like after I've done my research and I've come up with something, like sitting back, taking a look, and like kind of like building everything on top of it. That really is my favorite part. Um,
Awesome.
yeah, 'cause, like I really love to layer, to build, and collage, and there's just so many things. Like I'm like thinking of textures and like elements that I can put on top of this, to kind of like make it, super fun and stuff. And those are that for me, that's my favorite part of this entire thing.
Wonderful, wonderful, awesome. So we are in the midst of your favorite part. This is great. Let's see. Frederick says, Shanae and Val, what are your thoughts on creating logos using the golden ratio? Um, so
Hmm.
you mean like the Fibonacci spiral, that kind of like when it comes to like creating the perfect composition for logos? I don't know that I really
I
use
don't
that
use.
too much in my work
I don't use
for
it for you.
logos. Yeah. I think it kind of depends on like personal preference, and then also and maybe you've come across a situation like this just in your day-to-day work, Shanae, but sometimes when it comes to design and branding, um especially when you're branding with shapes and symbols and things specifically, and not just like photographs, images, and illustrations. When you're working with type and you're using symbols and things, um, there are rules that sometimes need to be broken in order for something to not look off to the eye, right? Because
Yep.
I've, in several instances, I've had a logo 100% lined up in my file, like centered perfectly, and it looks like it's listing to the left, and so I've had to rotate it and then break that center boundary a few times and push things off kilter, just so that when you glance at it, because maybe it's a little left heavy or right heavy or top heavy or whatever, sometimes you have to change things. So, in my experience, even when you use like a perfect ratio to try and create something, there's always a few exceptions where it doesn't really work. And so, I try not to force myself to believe that that's the only perfect way to create something, you know? And if it works for you, it works for you. But there are times where some of those rules can be broken, and if they need to be broken, but you believe that if you're using the golden ratio, then that's where things must be, you may end up creating logos and things that look slightly off, even if they're technically perfect.
Yep.
So
That's exactly what I was honestly taught myself in my first design job. Is it may be perfectly matched up, but your eye it's all about what the visual ratio is,
mhm.
quite frankly. And yeah, and like I'm honestly speaking, when I started to design, I saw so many of those like perfect golden ratio like breakdowns and spirals and all those grids, and it actually was a little intimidating for me. And I try to create logos like that, and I have, but honestly speaking, I never felt like my personality came through in those logos.
Mhm.
It felt a little bit too like cookie cutter in a
Mhm.
way, like like all right, the angle is this exactly 45-degree cut this way, so then you use that piece to make the bowl of the S or something. Like it's just super cookie cutter in a way. I didn't really feel any personality behind it.
Gotcha.
That's just me though. But
I love all of the different experimentations with like colors and stuff that you're starting to use over the top of these gradients, just kind of trying to
yeah.
see which shades are working the best.
hmm
Do you have a favorite one here so far?
I'm a very muted color personally, so I love this, but I'm also really loving this. Like I
Mm.
didn't think these three would look good together, but I think they did. But I really love the contrast of the orange and the blue and the light chartreusey green. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, because it's not too bright, and it's also not too like, um, it's not too desaturated that it doesn't look warm and fun. You know.
Exactly, exactly. And I'm debating on. I'm really liking this sort of a pink, but I feel like I need to make it a little bit darker. And I'm totally down for switching colors. That's my thing. Sometimes a color, yeah, like that works for me. I love that. Yeah.
Gotcha. I also love the little sun that's just kind of like topping all of them, and how you've like changed the color of it specifically for that one. Everyone, like in the one that you said is your favorite, all of those colors seem to work like so well, where again, it feels warm, but it's not so in your face that you're like, ah, so it's just
I agree.
very nice, very smooth.
And I think I'm going to use the sun as sort of like a secondary logo,
Mm-hmm.
just so like you can just put the pop of sun on it for Sunnies.
Like a little mark,
Yeah, like a
that
little
people
more.
can use or can recognize easily.
hmm Definitely want to play with that, around with that. So I'm just playing with this. Kind of thinking about like making a pattern out of it. Like this is why this is like my favorite part. I just like to play around with things and just see what I come
Mm.
up with. And I think I'm gonna add some textures in here. So I'm gonna pop into Adobe Stock in a little bit. Play around with some textures. Yeah, let me see this because I like this one too.
Yeah, I love that look of it, like kind of being just kind of a mark like off to the side
Mhm.
there, and not, the full thing is not really showing within the frame. It just gives it a nice little texture.
That's what I'm going for, and I want to play around with using both of these elements for the thickness and thinness of it. Like for me, like design and branding is all about experimentation and just really looking for stuff and like just having fun with it. And that's one of the reasons why I really love like this stage. Sure that.
Nice. It almost feels like a print that I would like to have like on a dress or like a sun top, you know?
Yeah. Super awesome. I like that's actually really beautiful when I think
Like a
about it.
nice little pattern, yeah.
That's what I wanted to do is one of the other elements for tomorrow is I'm gonna looking for a sunglasses case, and
Mm,
one of the deliverables is I want to play around with having a pattern, either pattern or the gradient or both on the sunglasses case.
that's awesome. Yeah. And that could be fun just to kind of jump back into what you've been doing with the gradients and like experimenting with more little combinations and things. Um so are you going to do like the glasses like just the glasses case or are you going to do other like points of packaging and stuff or is that kind of the only package-esque thing that we're going to jump into?
That's what I was gonna do some research on tonight, just kind of see, just because I was thinking of it. Um, Besides the glasses case itself, I was wondering if I did do like a little a box when you send the glasses in, possibly doing like the box design for that. That's one object, and then honestly, that's pretty much it. Yeah, I mean, yeah, the packaging for when you actually ship the box out, and then the actual sunglasses case. Yeah,
Nice, nice. That sounds
yeah,
fun. And then so, you know, because we were kind of on the topic of like, you know, you're making all these different things that could potentially be part of this branding. We've talked about finding work and uh, generating like a steady stream of clients. Maybe before, because we've got about 20 minutes left before we do portfolios, maybe we can talk a little bit too about actually interacting with those clients once you get them. So, would this be something like when these are all done, all these little tiles that you would present all of these to them, or would you present less or more than what you're working on right now? Like when it comes to actually saying here's what I've created, these are the assets, these are the concepts I'm working on, what does that typically look like or how do you go about that?
Oh, I definitely. So I present all of this in a grid. Usually, what I do is I don't do six. I do like 12, and
Nice.
present to them like in a really nice grid. A lot of my clients really care about their social media branding.
Hmm.
So I'll do like a IG mock-up, and I'll just put this entire thing in the feed so they can see like and
Oh.
you can see, and with it I'll also like curate a photography guideline for them. And
Hmm.
so I'll actually mix in some photography. I'll do some, templated quotes. I'll just do like some product shots and just kind of like give them a good grab bag mix of just like content just to start off with, where they
Hmm.
get their focus. And then they can just kind of like see, okay, this is where it's going to become and then where it can go.
Gotcha, gotcha. And then, I mean, have you ever had a client kind of break the borders of your style guide that you present them? Like, because I actually have had somebody do it before and it was like I kind of did what you did. I didn't do like the mock-up of like the social media feed, but I did do mock-ups of like posts for Twitter and like Instagram stories and everything, and I did some mock-ups including images and like photography and stuff. But have you ever had a situation where you kind of create like a little template like style guide and branding guide for a client to use and then they just don't use it that way and then you have your branding that is like different than how you intended it to be presented? Has that ever happened?
Yes, that has happened to me. And honestly speaking, at that point, as a thing, I let it go. Honestly speaking,
Mm-hmm.
I've given my recommendations. So far up to it, it seemed to be approved. If you've had any, talks with your team outside and you decide to take some elements, but ultimately, do something a little bit different, that's honestly speaking, that's on their choice because at
Mm-hmm.
that time I am no longer working with them.
Yeah.
So, I mean, at a point as a designer, I've learned kind of got to let go.
Mm-hmm.
You asked me this question like 3, 4 years ago, I definitely would have been like, I'll send an email. Here's a little extra guide thing, just reminder. You know how we had a little style guide, but
Hmm.
now at this point, I feel if that's what you choose to go for, then go for it. And if you come back to me asking for X, Y, and Z, I'd be more than happy to help you as we discuss a new project.
Hmm.
So
Gotcha. Okay. Cool. Cool. Yeah, I typically like for me when it happens to me, I'm just kind of like not my problem anymore. Like
yeah,
I did what was asked.
mhm.
It does feel awkward though when somebody is like, "Yeah, this is branding by so and so," and then they're using it in a totally different way than when what you intended, and then you're just like, "Yeah, it's mine, but I didn't warp the logo like you did." But
Yeah,
you
and
just kind of have to like let it go, or you go crazy. I think maybe, but
yep, that is very true. Very true. I've had to, you just gotta let it go, honestly speaking. And that's why on my website, like, I have the correct specs. So, like,
mm,
my
yeah.
work, and then you're curious about my work, and you can see the package that I delivered. And you clearly see there's like a discrepancy on what was delivered versus what's actually put up.
Hmm.
That's not on me.
Yeah, that's a really great point too, is that like if they're openly avidly saying this is the person who created our branding, then it doesn't really matter so much if they decide they're going to change a bunch of assets once they get it, because if you have like a really beautiful showcase in your portfolio for what you did, then people can go there and see like the true representation of your work, which is why, looping back to portfolios, why it's so important to create case studies, showing your process, showing how things are used, showing those mock-ups and everything, because then you don't have issues like that where nobody ever sees how you intended your brand. You have it there for yourself, so it doesn't matter if somebody else interprets it differently.
You actually like that. Hmm.
And Casey says, it helps me remembering that that's what they are, guidelines. In the end, it's totally up to their discretion. Yep, yep. And it feels weird sometimes, but, Malice says you could write it in a contract. And I don't know if you've ever done something like that, Shanee, but I've known people to have in their like work contract exactly how things can be used. But I've never done that aside from saying please do not mass produce this and recreate it and sell it
Yeah.
over and over again,
And for me personally, I honestly I'm not comfortable writing in in a contract that you have to use it this way that way, unless it's like you're selling it and you're making an extra profit out of it, then that's a different conversation.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, if you choose to do so, then that's yours. Like, it's the product that you paid for, and I can't tell someone you can only use your product this way. I don't personally, I just don't feel comfortable with that. That's just me though.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Somebody also, let's see, who was this? I want to make sure I give a proper shout out. Where did that come from? Paul Alvarez actually posted a really great suggestion for possible item branding for tomorrow. He says, what about a lens cleaning microfiber cloth? Um,
Oh, you
wouldn't
have
that
a
be cool? Yeah, there we go. Because you could put
ever.
like the logo watermark kind of on it, or you could make it
Yeah,
like interesting colors. That's a great idea, Paul.
Paul, you have the ideas. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of loving it. I'm loving how, even though tomorrow we're going to do the illustration, but like even with photography and illustration, like I think this is going to be really fun to look at together.
Yeah, I can't wait. They're also asking, let's see, I believe this was Frederick Kaula says, Shanae, do you have a step-by-step process for clients? Like, do you typically do the same thing every time you get into like a new professional relationship, or are a lot of your is a lot of your process based on a case-by-case basis?
Majority of it, there are certain things that are linear, but there are also a couple of elements that are case by case basis. For example, like I work with clients who do have established branding already, but they just need social media.
Mm-hmm.
So they have like no social media guidelines. So with that, I follow their established guidelines, and I'm also able to, I'm allowed a little bit of freedom to, like, play with certain elements, but for the most part, I'll stick with their guidelines per se. But then you have brands who don't have anything. They don't have, they're not sure where where they want to go.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that process that includes, like, the mood board exploration process and the color palette process and X, Y, and Z. And sometimes, depending on how unsure my client is from the beginning of where they want to go, like, the mood board process can be super in depth. So, like, I'll create
Gotcha.
3 or 4 of the ones that I previously created for this versus, the grid mood board, who's for a client who has an idea of what they want. They just want, I guess, a bit more tightened up imagery, tightened up, typeface X, Y, and Z. So
Gotcha.
that's kind of the process. And then when it comes to actually delivering the assets, I like to offer 3 rounds, just because, there's team members with people have different ideas and stuff. And so always offer 3 initial concepts and then 3 rounds of edits. And then, yeah, we go on from there.
Yeah, I do a similar thing. I typically, like, for illustration, I go through, I create kind of a mood board collage that I go over with my client,
Mhm.
so that I make sure during my process, like, I will jump into, even if possible, like, a Discord call or a Zoom call and share my screen and, like, put together the mood board with my client to make sure that we're on the same page as far
Mhm.
as what we're going through, and make sure I have, like, proper notes and things so that there's no question. Like, if it ends up being different than what they're looking for, it's either um, because I made a mistake, which that happens sometimes.
Yeah.
Um, but it's something that can easily be corrected because it's on my end, or because they changed their mind after the meeting, which in turn is something that we discuss. But at least make sure initially that we're on the same page. And then I will do a few sketches for that, and then have them look over that. Then I do like basic values and things for illustration, have them look over that. And I tell them in the beginning there's different kinds of changes that I will allow a client to make. And for illustration, if there's any illustrators or painters in the chat, this is something that is really important that I did not do at the beginning of my career because I didn't realize that it was so important until I ran into a bad situation. And that is, when I'm towards the beginning of an illustration, I tell people that is the time when you can make major changes because, you doing illustration, Shanae, and other people in chat who do it may understand. When you're in the beginning phase, it's very, very easy to make pretty dramatic changes to what you're doing because not everything is solidified yet.
Mhm.
But once I get to, like, the final round of critique, I tell people minor changes only, which means I can change colors of certain things, I can change textures, and I can change the illustration style of tiny, teeny tiny details. But if somebody asks me, this is actually what happened. And how I learned my lesson the hard way. And that was, I wasn't clear on that with a client once, and we got down to the final levels of a painting, and they asked me, "Can you change this character's outfit?" And I
Mm.
was like, "No."
Yeah.
When you
No.
painted it already, you can't change a character's outfit. That's a major, major change that should have been made at the beginning of the process. But yeah, keep in mind, what are you willing to change at each stage of the process, and make sure you're very clear about that and communicate that with your client. Because you may run into having to repaint some stuff, or redesign some stuff, and that doesn't always feel good.
Doesn't it? And one thing I've noticed that I do in my contracts is that I actually add in a clause saying that if we're 30%, sorry, if we're 40% into the process
Hmm.
and there's a change that's not on my end, then that's an extra 30% of the total project fee tacked on.
Mm,
Simple,
that's
and then
good.
that
Yeah.
itself, because I've been that same situation before where, literally speaking, it's just like it's just too much. I've put in like so many hours, and it's just like we got to go back and change all of this, and it's not even for like an actual reason. It's just because you wanted to change something differently. Then that,
Hmm.
it does hold the process back, and it makes the delivery time, even different. And then if you expect the same delivery time, nope.
Yeah, and it's really really stressful. It used to give me a lot of anxiety just personally realizing that I was going to have to make a change like that. And like you said, if they want the delivery date to be the same, and that they want the price to be the same, like you should be paid more for more work, even if you honestly not even if you deliver at the same date, because you're delivering at the same date, because that means you're kicking it into overdrive,
Yep.
trying to push that end product to completion. And you had way more work than that was originally agreed upon. So yeah, I do, depending on on the project. That's one of my things that changes from project to project, is the amount of money I'm being paid and how much additional components of the project will cost if things are getting tacked on as we go along. Because I've been in a situation where I ended up having to do like almost twice the work by the
Yep.
end of the project, and I still got paid the same amount and had to do things by the same date, which in turn meant that by the time I was done with that particular project, I actually made less than minimum wage for design work. And that's not where you want to be.
Not
It's
at
hard.
all. Not at all. So protect. My thing is always protect yourself because you have to as a creative in this industry. You really have to, and there's nothing wrong with protecting yourself. Just think about it. The time and the energy that we really put in for this work, it's not a one, two, three sort of a situation.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
not. We put in effort and time and research and even the skill that it takes to learn. It doesn't matter if you went to school or you're self-taught. The fact is that you put in that time and that effort, that energy to learn. And
Mm-hmm.
so it needs to be accurately compensated and made sure that you're not being taken advantage of. So those things for me are super ethical and super important.
Yep. And charging based on, like you said, something really important, and that was like the time it took you to do everything, and to, even if you're self-taught, the effort that you put into honing your skill. Um, there's a time where charging hourly is necessary and charging a flat rate is necessary, because once you get really good at your job, you might be spending an hour on something that once took you a few days to do. And getting better and faster and more efficient and creating higher quality work in less amount of time should not mean that you get paid less because you're spending less hours on it. I think after a certain amount of time, you should be charging not only for your time and your work that you're putting in, you should also be charging um, for the 10, 15 years or so it took you to get to the point to be able to do the job. You know what I mean? Like all that previous time and effort that you've put in should be taken into consideration because it's important. And I'm not saying like put that on the invoice. This is like $500 for this, like a an avatar illustration plus another, a couple $100 for all the time I spent before. I just mean, if you're going to charge a flat rate for something, or even if you're going to continue to charge an hourly rate, make sure some of the money that's factored in there has to do with the fact that you have accomplished stuff in your career that have made you the person that those clients wish to go to for that work, you know?
Yep.
And it can be hard to price yourself, as the designer. But I don't know about you, Shanae, but I struggle to price my own work sometimes, so I have to ask somebody else how much it's worth.
It for a while, and that for a while, honestly speaking, as also as a female creative, I struggled with
Mm-hmm.
pricing my work
Yep.
because I felt that maybe my I saw that my male counterparts were getting so much more money, and I'm like, well, am I good enough? Do I have enough experience? Should I do that? And I was like really doubting myself, and that's something that you kind of can't do. So yeah, making sure that you price yourself
Mm-hmm.
correctly is extremely important.
And getting input from other designers and other people sometimes is key in that, because no matter how hard I tried in the beginning coming up with prices for myself, I was terrified to say, yeah, this is what I charge. And in many many cases I underpriced my work because I was terrified of admitting exactly how much money I needed to survive. Like I thought I was doing something wrong by giving an honest quote. Um, which is, I have to say, I think that not only is it like damaging to one's own self because you're not being paid what you need to be paid.
Mhm.
It also, in a way, affects the entire creative community as a whole, because the more people that don't charge what they're worth, the more non-creatives who hire creative people for work get the wrong idea about how much the work is worth, if
I
that makes sense.
totally agree.
So,
Totally agree.
um, what about working with another designer? Do you invoice separately or together? That's interesting, because I always work on my own. I don't know if have you ever worked with other designers on a creative project?
Yes, I do work with other designers on a creative project, and usually we set up a rate that we work with, and then
Mm-hmm.
we work together on it.
Mm. And then just split whatever.
Well, it depends. For example, so like the only time I honestly really work with another designer is if I need a junior designer to help me out with overflow. And
Mm.
so that we have like a custom set rate that we work on. And it depends on exactly what assets. Like I give them a list of assets. So I'll tell you like $800 for like 20 social media posts, like 10 static, 3 animated, 3 illustrated, whatever, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so like I'll break it down that way and then I'll give them the cash for that. And we discuss the rate. If they're comfortable with it, cool. If they're not, we could talk about more. I'm more definitely about making sure everyone gets paid correctly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's how I do it. As for working with someone who is on, like who is a more seasoned creative, I actually haven't collaborated with another seasoned creative.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. So maybe that's something that I will think about for a time, because I've never. I think typically, like, even though our the work that you and I do, Shanae, isn't exactly the exact same type of stuff, but I think we kind of have worked in similar ways, where
Okay.
like our process seems to be similar, and like our method of finding work and continuing a project is similar. So that's, yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. I don't really know. I don't have a process, like a go-to process for how to do
Yeah.
that. Also, we have hit our deadline for portfolio reviews. I can, if you want to kind of take a few minutes to kind of organize your artboards here that you're setting up, we can do that and take a look before we jump over to the portfolios. And then we're going to look, I'm going to pull up the things here, and then when you're ready to pull them up, just let me know, Shanae, and I will flip over to the other view for us.
For sure. I'm gonna come in 1 second. Let me just pop this on and duplicate it, and we are golden.
Chris Olson says, lots of great tips about keeping the project fee based on your abilities as a professional designer. Clients would never ask an accountant to do something for less based on speed. Yeah, I think a lot of people forget how important they are personally to to the process as well. Like we get stuck thinking all the time that it's like the end product is the only thing that matters. But the important thing is that that end product that we created, we would not have that if it weren't for the time that we ourselves put in, and the effort and the passion that we have. And that in itself is unique and important. And we deserve to be paid for the time and effort we put in. Just plain and simple, you know. So I am going to pop over to the portfolios that we've got. And then when you have them up, just let me know, Shanae, and we will take a look at both of them. We're going to be looking today at Tali Shelman and Paul Alvarez. Awesome, our friend Paul with the awesome ideas for the project
Yes.
today. So let's take a look at Paul first, shall we? And I'm gonna pop over here, and I'm gonna pull this up. Okay, so right when we jump onto Paul's page, and I think Paul is still in chat, hopefully, so we can kind of chat at him as we do this. The first thing I like to look at, Shanee, is like, do they have information about their previous work? Do they have like the list of their tools that they use, an about me segment, and any other things? And Paul does. I personally think that the About Me segment is not too long. Like, it's not too long winded, but it's not so short that I feel like I'm not learning about him. And he also seems to have, like, information about what he does, what he likes to create. But I also like that he seems very optimistic and positive. Like, it has that that personality added to his About Me segment, and that catches my eye. Is there anything, like, just like taking a first glance at this, that catches your eye?
Yes, definitely. First of all, looking at the portfolio's color,
Mm.
like there's so much color, which I love. I love, love, love. And I'm looking at like the detail and the shadow of it, and I think that's just super beautiful. That's what really jumped out to me, and the mix of typography that you have.
Mm. Yeah, you're right. That's definitely, I feel like Paul definitely has a really good eye for how to make an eye catching uh, cover for all of his projects, because they all seem different. Like, clicking on them will be kind of transporting you to a totally different space.
Mhm.
And they all do have like a really great collection of different kinds of typography. What would you say is the most eye-catching project that he has on his main page? Maybe we can take a look at it together and offer some feedback.
Sure. I actually just like hopped into the incredible kettlebell just because I kind of like the type. It was really interesting to me.
Okay. Let's see. Looks like comics to me.
This is amazing.
Wow.
This is absolutely amazing. Like the actual product of the kettlebell, the comics on there,
Hmm.
all the tags that were created,
Wow.
and the social media posts, the illustrations I love. They're so detailed and they're very clean.
Yeah.
I love Ballistic Girl.
Yeah, I
My,
was about to say, I love the representation there, that it's not just like a workout regimen
Mhm.
for like centered around like the male audience. It has something for everybody here. So we have something that's a little more like masculine, something that's more feminine, and then we have like the smiley face that's just kind of a neutral in between. If people prefer something like that, they can go for that rather than the opposite ends of the spectrum there. So that's really cool. Kind of makes everyone feel welcome and at home. Um,
What's interesting,
Gosh.
I really love this little tidbit of history of what the heck is a kettlebell.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a kettlebell, sorry. I really love this little tidbit of history and the little infographic. It's Russian. Yes. This is so cool. Like I didn't even know it was a Russian product. This is so cool.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So I would say, personally, I think that this is a really. Oh, there's even animations. If you scroll down to like where the cups and the posters are, you can see they change. Yeah, right there. The cups and the hoodies and everything.
I
Um,
love
I think this is a really great example of what a good case study can be, because right up at the top, it gave us like has like this really cool like intro, like boom, here's a bunch of assets for this kettlebell club, and then right there it says the IKC, and here is like a kind of an opening statement and where they came from, why this project is a thing. So we have the context there immediately. And then, like you mentioned, I mean, I love the typography and all these cool logos, but then just like the little tidbits of history, where it came from, even. I just think this is great. This is really good looking.
patches. I didn't even see that the patches for the clothing.
Yeah,
These are so cool. Like this is really really cool.
yeah,
And
and I love, oh, the denim is changing behind the patches. Oh my gosh.
I love both logos
Yeah,
going on at the top.
this is cool.
This is really really cool, man. This is
Yeah.
really
I also love the thank you at the end. I love that distressed kind of painted look, with the illustration and just the kind of like, thanks, like that's the end of the project. It doesn't end abruptly. It's got like a nice little touch at the end there that lets you know that you've come to the end, and thank you for checking it out. That's I really don't think I have any critiques for that project, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, same here, honestly. I think you nailed this, rocked this out of the park. This is a beautiful case study that I myself am taking notes from. So.
Yeah, yeah, same. This is cool. Is there any other project that you might choose to check out before we switch to our other thing, or did you have some other last minute advice on the previous one?
Not last minute advice, but one thing I just noticed is I love Easter eggs in design, and I noticed with the thank you, the sender, or sorry,
Oh yeah,
the thumbs up. So I just saw
yeah.
that. Super cool.
That's so cool. Yeah, it's got that little like, yeah, you're awesome. Thank you for being here.
Okay, I love this. This is great branding, great work. Love it. Continue on. Love it.
I'm loving that Adobe Cadabra.
Yeah, what is that?
That's something that we say here on Adobe Live. I can't remember who came up with that. It might have been Paul Tranny or Adobe Kush a while ago. We were trying to kind of like maybe it was Tim. I'm not sure. Maybe one of our moderators in chat can figure out like when that actually came about. But anytime somebody does something on Adobe Live that is like spectacular and unexpected, a lot of people in chat will type in caps Adobe Cadabra because it's like Adobe magic. Oh my gosh, there's a sticker and it's holographic. I can't handle this. It's all my favorite colors.
I love this.
Wow.
Dimension. That's a program that I haven't even checked out that I want to check out now looking at this.
Yeah.
Kidding.
So this was so we've got great context. We all know the feeling when you explore the tools and programs to take your design to that next level. That's Adobe Cadabra. It's probably the phrase coined on Adobe along with Zoop, but it inspired me to jump into exploring the programs and see what I could create. That's a really awesome like prelude to like this excellent piece of work. You definitely hit this project with some Adobe Cadabra. I would say, like, at first, I love all of the different, like, backgrounds and, like, the animation, that shows this kind of coming together and the video of the sticker and everything. I would say the only thing I find myself wanting from this project, that I don't have yet is a little more context into the 3D aspect, because we have this one 3D shot here. What do you think, Shanee?
I definitely agree. I would definitely love a bit more context behind the 3D shot. I would actually kind of see how you build that out just a little bit, just because it's so interesting, like a little bit more behind the scenes process shots of it. I think
Yeah.
it's interesting, and kind of, why 3D? That's my question: is why 3D? I love it, but why?
Mm-hmm.
I would like to know that answer too.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. But I think that's all. I think that's all I really have to offer on this one. I think it's so great. It's just like, on top of it being so intricate, it's just a really good looking design.
Yep, it
You
is.
know, and I think that it's totally a relevant topic to have reviewed on Adobe Live. But yeah, if you unless you want to add something else, Shanae, I think we can kind of jump into our next portfolio so that we have time to make sure we offer Tally some feedback as well.
Really, I'm ready for that now.
Let's see. Let me pop over. All right, Tally Shalman, or I hope I'm not butchering that last name. But thank you very much, Tally, for submitting your portfolio. What are your first thoughts like when you first show up to Tally's portfolio, Shanae?
I like your logo. For some reason, your logo reminds me of a snake growing like around like a sword or a staff or something like that.
Oh, the caduceus for
Yeah,
it's the that they have on like ambulances and stuff. It kind of reminds me of the caduceus. Yeah.
that, or it kind of also reminds me of very like Harry Potter, the Slytherin.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
That's in the toilet.
Yeah. I knew what you're talking about. I saw it in my head. We are full of Harry Potter puns today. This is all the Harry Potter analogies this afternoon.
I love that. It's interesting. And I really love the pattern that you have in the back with the hand drawn squiggles and doodles. I think that's really
Mm-hmm. And a nice gradient. It's very calming. I feel like it's equal parts fun and organic while still being very clean and precise.
yep.
And I love that. Um, I'm gonna kind of scroll through here. I love that how your work is kind of set up. We have like a pretty, I think a pretty different collection of different kinds of projects, and then we have like a little about segment here, and then the contact, and that's kind of it, because that's all it looks like. I bet if I'm clicking through, I can kind of just go to the about, the blog, the contact. Oh, you have a blog, which is cool. um, that's amazing. So we actually get, if we want more personal information from you, we can totally check you out. But otherwise, I really like that everything is just right on this page. Um, is there any project that you see that kind of jumps out to you that you'd like to take a closer look at?
Yes, I'm very much in love with the. I like the Karen Walker eyewear ad campaign.
Ooh, very fitting for today as well.
I love how you illustrated the people and then you added the real sunglasses on top. I think that's super interesting.
You know what I love is that if you look really closely at the glasses, it even has the actual photograph image of the person wearing them in the glasses. And then the illustration kind of continues the shape of like the side of the face and the eyelashes and everything. This is very cool.
I wonder, was that intentional?
I'm
Because
not sure, but it fits so good.
it's like that's really cool.
Let's see. I also love the mock-ups, because the illustrations are great. But being able to see those mock-ups at the end really show me like, boom, this is how it would be applied. And I think that the concepts are great and they fit in very well, like in the mall, on the street, in a magazine. And you didn't really go overboard, because some people go overboard with all the different mock-ups they do. These are three ways in which this design would work very well. And I think you chose well.
Love it. Yep.
Very cool. Are there any more projects that you would like to check out? Anything that jumps out at you?
Sure, let's look at the organic ranch.
Okay. Branding and identity. Ooh. I like it. Um, Again, I like these mock-ups.
Yeah, they're very clean and to the point, which I love.
Yeah. I would say maybe I'd like to see a little bit more context on why you chose to design the logo the way you did, and maybe the steps. Like, did you sketch it in a sketchbook and everything? Did you design it purely in like Illustrator? Did you, like the process for creating it? But I think the presentation for it is really great. And maybe that's personal, like a personal opinion. Like, I want to see the process. What do you think, Shanee? Do you want to see more of that process, or are you good with just the presentation of how it could work in use?
I would love to see a bit more of the process behind it. I want to know why you choose the leaves and the circle, what's the symbolism behind it. I
Mm,
would love to see how this all ties in together. Yeah, I agree.
gotcha. Yeah, I like it. I also I think one of my favorite parts about this is one thing that a lot of people do. Maybe you've seen this as well, Shanae, is when people are creating mock-ups for their work, they typically just take like the first version that they created of a logo that they like, and they just kind of slap it onto everything. But if you look at that one page where it has like the twine and the tags and like all the different kinds of items, I think it's like the first mock-up. I love that not only did you use like the green organic ranch version, you also have like the white version of it on the business cards, and then you made like a really beautiful um like glossy black version, like black on black, for that box on the side. I think that's really cool. um
Love
Changed it up, based on what you're going to be using it for, and I think that looks really cool. So yeah, I think that both of our wonderful designers that we've looked over today, Tally and Paul, I think you guys both do a really fabulous job. Um, we didn't really have much to like critique as far as the quality of your work, really. Maybe just adding more context in certain areas with regards to how it's presented, but the work itself, you guys are on point. Um, and yeah, I think we've kind of like checked out a couple things, and we're gonna be taking off here pretty soon. So maybe we can jump back into your work, Shanee, and kind of go over everything that you worked today, do a little recap, and then maybe talk about what we have planned for tomorrow.
Of course, of course. So today we just kind of went over and got the initial branding done for Sunnies. We have our logo, our primary logo. We have our secondary logo, which is the sun. We have our typeface, which is Moret, bold and sorry, bold and regular. I'm liking the oblique style. We have our color palette and our gradient set. And then one thing I did add is I added a little bit of texture. I personally love adding, you see this sort of like grit to it,
Like noise. Ooh,
and grit noise, and I think it just kind of also adds like a sun ray sort of a feel like that sun glow. So
I agree.
I'm loving this so far. And so tomorrow, what I'm working on is I'm gonna pull up some imagery inspiration, and I'm gonna work on the main hero image. And then I'm gonna also illustrate a couple of sunglasses, pairs of sunglasses, just two pairs of sunglasses, the main illustration hero image, and then we're gonna mock all of that up with our branding package.
Oh, I'm so excited. This is going to be great. And now like you kind of have like this zoomed in so we can really see like that grit texture there. And I got to say I'm kind of like right there with you because every time I am done doing any kind of like graphic design or something, I'm like I could put noise on this, right? I could put, I could put some texture on this, right? And there's like a little like tiny me in the back of my head that's like, no, you do that every time, and I'm like, nah, 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 nah. I can put some texture on it. I'm gonna put some noise. I love adding noise. Um, Gosh, yeah, these look so great. And I would like to comment on the one with the girl in the black sunglasses that you have. The colors in the photograph versus the colors that you chose
They match.
they match so well, and I don't know, like, because I remember you were kind of like changing colors up and putting them there. Did you choose them specifically because they match so well with her image, or did they just happen to?
That literally just happened to. Honestly, what I was really inspired by is the green jacket. I really, really loved the green jacket and how bold it looked against all of like the other holographic colors.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I loved. And then also, I'll just click back to the mood board real quickly. So, like with here, I loved how this green looked really beautiful with this sort of like overlay style. With
Mm-hmm.
the, and so that's what I did with, sorry, with this. What happened? Here we go. With this, I played with the overlay of the text, which I think also kind of like mimics that sort of like sun ray feel, sun coming.
Yeah. Yeah, and I do really love that because I think in like on the left hand side it's really bright and beautiful, and then it has that gold feel towards the right, and then it does get really bright towards that upper right green, but not so bright that you can't still read it, and it's just like totally perfect. So yeah, these look so great. It has been an absolute pleasure getting to watch you design and talk with you and hang out today. Unfortunately, we are coming up on pretty much the end of the stream. So maybe before we take off, we can talk about what is the best place online for people to find your work, to give you a follow, and keep updated on everything that you're going to be working on in the future.
Honestly, just follow me on Instagram at Shanee Benjamin, my first and last name. Hit me up on a DM. I will always respond back. I love talking to people. So just hit me up on Instagram, and I'm super excited to meet everyone.
Awesome! Yay! I can't wait to hang out tomorrow and kind of jump back into this project. Thank you again, Shanee. It has been a blast. Thank you, chat. Thank you, everyone, for being here with us today and hanging out. And thank you also for kind of taking that leap and taking that plunge and sharing your portfolios with us today, because I know that that can be kind of daunting sometimes. So thank you very much for sharing your work, everyone. We have to take off, but we will see you tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. Pacific time for another awesome stream. And before we jump off line real quick, I am going to review the schedule because we are not, as I said earlier, the only designers who are going to be here hanging out with you today. Coming up right after us is going to be the one and only Andrew Hockrattle doing the Illustrator Daily Creative Challenge. We will have Rachel Smith after that with the UI UX design systems, followed by Andrea, who will be doing the Adobe XD Daily Creative Challenge. And then we're going to round the day out with Kathleen Martin, who is going to be hanging out doing a sketch party at 2:30 p.m. So that's what we've got planned, and that's going to be our schedule for tomorrow as well. So if you missed anything, you guys can always go back, watch the VODs. If you showed up in the middle of our segment today, the video will be available for you soon. And if you want to hang out with us tomorrow, show up at the same time, same place, and we will be ready and raring to go. So thank you, everyone, so much. Thank you, Shanee, and we are gonna head off. Adios, folks.